Hey y'all, happy Baby Friday. Betty here with Compliant Healthcare Solutions, and I am once again welcoming my good friend and colleague Sonal Patel from SP Collaborative. Hey Sonal.
Hi, Betty. How are you today?
Good. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Enjoying some warm weather finally up here.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, we actually hit 91 or something like that today.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
very pleasant here.
Nice. Nice. I
which
love
is
it.
which is where I get my
Your
lovely little
gorgeous
glow
tan.
from.
Yes. That's what I need. I'm in desperate need of a glow. Yes. Yes.
So we got a lot of people coming in already. So great. So I
Awesome.
see Marie, my friend Marie Turner from Chicago is on. Hey
Hi,
Marie.
Marie.
And Ladriba, of course, is back with us today. So hey to you, Ladriba.
Hi, Ladriba.
And Grabiella, I know she's been on with us a couple times. So
Hey,
hope
Grabiella.
everybody's having a good Thursday. We are going to talk about the second in our series of audit. When we started the audit discussion a couple broadcasts ago, we just couldn't get through everything in one session. So we decided to kind of do a three-part. So last time we talked about planning the audit, a retrospective, prospective, all of that other good stuff. And today we're going to talk about actually doing the audit. So we're going to talk about like some tools and different things that you can use and answer, like if y'all have questions, again, start throwing them in there for us and we'll kind of get to them and discuss them as we go through stuff. And that's our subject today. And then in the future, I know we have it scheduled, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I should have looked before we came on. We're going to do our part 3, which is after the audit, like what do you do, presenting your findings, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to totally wrap up our audit stuff here. But before we start on that, just wanted to check in because Sonal, I know that you have a little news for everybody on the SP Collaborative company.
That's right. You guys have been waiting, I know, but that website of mine is finally up and active. So there it is. It's on the screen, www.spcollaborative.net. So come on by and visit my gallery of services. So I'm already experiencing quite an uptick in work from the website and people just reaching out. So the audits are coming in fast and furious once again, even for me and my little company. So this conversation that we're having together today is pretty timely and appropriate. And I, for one, am really happy that we took the time to develop a series, right? Because I know so many people do try and teach auditing like in a 1-hour webinar, and we're talking a mile a minute. And we miss so much, right?
Yeah.
So I really do think that having a 3-part series is a good first step in this conversation, especially because, as we've talked about before in our E&M series together as well, that our E&M stuff has totally changed, right, in 21 and 23. So the two pieces kind of go hand in hand.
And it seems like with the E&M stuff too, they keep coming out with little tweaks throughout the year. Where either the AMA or CMS will like put a little thing out there, like April we had the ones from AMA.
From March, right.
And so I'm sure that CMS, will be putting a little something out here soon. I know I got a thing that the AMA just put out their CPT quarterly thing.
Yep.
And it's got a whole section about E&M in the back of it. So if y'all get that, make sure you take a look at this quarter's to kind of see what they're talking about in there. They're talking about like the revamping of it and stuff. It's like a little flip book that's electronic now that they send out. So that's something good to take a peek at.
Yeah.
But yes, and for those of y'all who have not been to Sonal's website, obviously you might not have found her yet because we didn't have everything up, but it is just a beautiful website. So you will really, really love looking at the site. It's just very pretty, all the colors and everything that runs through. It's just fabulous. Our friend Patty Hernandez of Fired Up Creative is the one that set both my site and Sonal's site up. So if you like our websites and you're looking for some kind of graphic stuff, Patty Hernandez at Fired Up Creative is who designed both of them. So if you want to get connected with her for anything, let either one of us know, and we'll hook you up with Patty, or you can look for her on LinkedIn. Her name is Patricia Hernandez. So she is just wonderful. So I had to plug our girl Patty. So
absolutely, yeah, she's a gem. She's a real find. Absolutely, yeah, love it.
And then also, before we get started, and other than the website finally being live, any other stuff on the horizon with you that you want to put out there for us? I want to give you time.
Yes, thank you. Well, Paint the Medical Picture podcast is in its 9th season. The 2nd episode just dropped on Wednesday. So I've pushed ahead into yet another season. It's like my 140th episode, something crazy. So definitely find me on Spotify. It's a great podcast. Again, just about providing the news of what is going on. I especially like to focus on our OIG work plan, fraud, waste, and abuse, a lot of my compliance tips and recommendations. This week's drop focuses on that modifier 25. Sorry, once again, because it's still in the news, right? With that ridiculous Cigna policy that is slated to take effect here on May 25th. It was the 23rd, but now it's the 25th, whatever. So I think they're still really going to push this out despite all of the physicians and the AMA, the societies backing the fact that this is a warranted modifier, right? If the documentation supports it. But anyway, so that's for my podcast. My good friend here, Betty, and I are planning to reveal another podcast that she and I are starting together. I'm not going to tell you the title of it just yet, but it's going to feature myself and Betty, and we will bring on some guests from time to time. But of course, it's going to be in this same space about compliance in healthcare billing and coding. So, yeah. So those are some of my good new things. Yeah.
Good. And also, we wanted to once again talk about the Mastering the Business of Medicine Retreat by the Sea. For those of y'all who either didn't hear us last time, you weren't on, we had Beth Schleiper from Advanced Coding Services on, and she is the one that has put together these retreats. And y'all, they are just fabulous. It's very casual. In fact, I think one of her promos that she did, she was like no makeup with a t-shirt on, because she's like, come as you want to come. So you don't have to like get conference dressed up, in a business attire as you're going around. She's, shorts, t-shirts, flip-flop, whatever you want to wear, just be comfortable. It's in San Diego. It is June 9th through the 11th. So it's Friday through Sunday. And all of your things are included. So it's one fee for everything. So your meals, your room, all the sessions, it's worth 18 CEUs. So for those of y'all who have one credential, you can get a year's worth of your CEUs in a weekend. And you get to see me and Sonal. So, and lots of other people like Christine Hall, Brenda Edwards, Pam Vanderbilt, and Beth, of course, too. So it's going to be just really, really a good time and good networking. Do you want to say anything about the retreat?
Sure. Well, this is going to be our first time attending in San Diego. And, I'm just really excited for this unique opportunity to provide education to everybody in the field who wants to know more and needs those 18 CEUs, right? Most importantly. So I think this is a really good retreat type of an event, right? Totally different than these big conferences that we are used to attending. And in terms of the price point, I think it's incredibly affordable since everything is included, right? Your education, your lodging, and your food, everything is included. So it's pretty remarkable. And I just wanted to remind our watchers out there that this retreat concept of Beth's is supposed to be offered throughout the country. So we will have to stay tuned for where it will be heading to next. I believe she wants to post it in, I think, September or October. So we will have to wait and see where that location for that second retreat of the year is going to be. So very exciting. And I can't wait. And I hope all of you can make it. It's just a few weeks away. So you still have time to register and come see us in San Diego. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, and we'll have, I'm going to do an E&M Ninja session. So we're going to take some evaluation and management records and practice on them. I've designed a game, a coding game, and we're going to play that. And Sonal's got a couple sessions she's going to do on networking and
the new auditing standards for 23. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, you can hear about them from her and then come and put them into practice with me in my session. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, and there'll be some session on the No Surprises Act, one on risk, and we're going to do a new session, a concept that I came up with that Beth thought was good. So I'm really excited about this. We're going to have like a panel discussion of those of us that are there as speakers that are consultants, and y'all will be able to come and ask us whatever your questions are if you're interested in becoming a consultant, or you have your regular job and you're looking for maybe like a side gig kind of thing. So it's going to be kind of like an open forum with Beth moderating, to where y'all can ask us questions about getting clients and, how do you set things up and all that kind of stuff. Website, do you need one or not? So that I think will be very valuable for those of y'all that are thinking about making that leap or that turn.
Exactly. It was a great idea because I do think there's so many people in the industry who are looking to branch out. If not grow their career, definitely keep it as a side hustle. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a really valuable panel talk as well. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And by the way, we will also be trying to provide little snippets, a little live stream conversation here or there, just to tease all of you who couldn't quite make it to San Diego. We will put ourselves on camera with either my podcast or here with Healthcare Happenings in June when we're in San Diego. So, yeah.
And I just put the link here for the retreat into the chat. So those of y'all that are watching can, be able to get it from in there. And by the time we're done today, I'll also put Sonal stuff over there. I know I did the SP Collaborative, but I'll put her other stuff over there too for y'all to be able to go to and access. So yes, wonderful. And a couple of people like Lady, hey Lady.
Hi Lady.
She made a comment that anybody that's attending will love it. So she was there last year and it's a phenomenal retreat. So yes, very, very good time. And Grabiella is saying she's like hoping the stars align so that she can see us there. So we hope that you can make it too.
Yes, we do.
So yes, we'll have a really good time. Oh, Rosamine is on. Hey, Rosamine.
Hey, Rosamine. Nice.
All right. So on to our topic for today. And as I had said before, y'all, as you have questions, go ahead, please put them in the comments so we can address them. We're going to talk about actually doing the audit. What kind of tools do you need, or maybe make yourself available, to take a look at? Different people like different things and like to use different things. So some of the things we throw out there, you may check out and, they might not, be something that you like or want to use or whatever, but we're just giving suggestions. And as we go through some of these things, if y'all that are listening, use something specific or rely on a tool or anything like that, please go ahead and throw it in the chat for everybody else to be able to take a look at, because that's, why we're all on here today, is to, network with each other and to share information so that it benefits everybody. And Lord knows I don't know everything. So,
Exactly.
we put out there what we know. And I think we're really good in our community, in our field, at sharing things with each other. I mean, you get some people that, are a little bit stingy with, what they're going to share. But I think for the most part, we realize there's more than enough to go around, and hoarding information doesn't really benefit the field. So if you love what you do, you need to kind of pass things along. So, I mean, I'm not going to be doing this forever. So we need those next people coming up to be able to know all these things, to be able to keep the profession going on. And I saw this morning, I think the company is posting it. There was an article put out that talks about the fact that now they're looking at a shortage of coders. Because of the gain in everything that's going on in the field and the aging population, and that, so they're stating that there's going to be a shortage of coders in the industry. So that's something to kind of be mindful of, and watch for the article. That I didn't write it, but it talks about I think it's one of Baptist hospitals that created their own coding university kind of thing, where they had PMCC brought in to allow their staff to go through training to become certified coders. And then after getting certified, they're allowing them to work at home. And, so they're putting together this whole thing to grow their own, because they couldn't find people to hire. So I think those are great things to look out for, and to kind of just keep an eye out for. So it was I thought it was an interesting article. All right, let me see if we got. Oh, Lori, you're well. Lori said, thank you for sharing, man. Again, we that's what we like to do. We love doing this stuff. So I thank y'all for, paying attention to us. All right. And thanks to everybody that wished me a happy birthday. I appreciated that. That was very nice. So just want to say thanks. So tools. Doing the audit, I find that before I do an audit, when I'm getting into an audit, I don't know about you, Sonal, but I kind of try to have all my stuff lined up to where I can work in an efficient manner. So I don't like to touch a record, whether it be a physical record. It's been a long time since I've gotten actual physical paper charts, but even electronically, if I have to go into the chart and then I'm doing something and then I have to go back into it again, it's wasteful. It's wasteful of my time. And so I like to try to have everything lined up at how I'm going to do it. So I like to have my spreadsheet up. I like to have it set up. I like to have my tools up that I'm going to use, so that I go into the patient, I audit the record. As I'm auditing the record, I'm entering the information, so that I'm just smoothly going, and not having to go back. Back in the old days when we're on paper, I would spend time highlighting, coding, doing whatever, on the copy of the record, and then have to go and put that information then into the spread. So it's like doing the work twice.
Double.
So one tip that I would just give to people is, try to kind of have your ducks in a row when you get set up and ready to do it, so that you're only touching things once, or as little as possible, because sometimes you just have to go back in and look at something else. Maybe you have to go look at a lab or a path or something like that. So you end up having to go somewhere else, but you want to do as little of that as possible. I don't know, Sonal, if you're kind of like that same mentality.
Yeah, I'm absolutely the same. I like to wait to receive all of the items that I requested, right? I don't want to go in and start working just to wait for something that I asked for, right? I like to wait. And you're absolutely right. You have to have all of your tools open, right? Separate tabs, separate screens. I don't like to do things on paper anymore. I like to just do the work once on the computer, right? Instead of repeating the work from the paper, like your handwriting notes, something like that, which then you're re-entering into the computer. I agree with you. That is double work. I've done that in previous positions, and it was wasteful of my time, right? Um, you have to realize how to become more efficient, and that's absolutely right. I still am old school. I like to use the Excel spreadsheet. I know we'll talk about that later in our conversation today, but if other people like to use software that's out there, that's great. But I still like to use my Excel spreadsheets and create them the way I want them to look clean and professional, so the provider, the hospital, whoever is the recipient, can understand their comprehensive audit findings, right? That need to be input on those cells of the Excel spreadsheet. Yeah.
Poor Terry. I had to put it.
What did she say?
Terry says, you're lucky. I just got 200 paper charts that, of course, are not legible from a hospital physician group, and also another 100 from a payor. And they printed everything. So several trees had to die
for this. Oh my God.
Now, I do have one client right now that I'm doing an audit for that it is on paper, but luckily they scanned it and sent it to me. So I am trying to look at illegible handwriting. And so I'm blowing things up, and it's a little difficult. Yeah, the handwritten chart notes, boy, whew. And I thought as I started doing it, I said, man, back in the day, I was so good at reading that chicken scratch.
Totally.
But once we moved into the EHRs and everything was so nice and pretty, now I get one of those handwritten charts and I'm like, oh my Lord, so now I'm back to trying to figure out, is that a P, a Q, so yes, bless you, Terry. That's all I got to say. I know that is definitely no fun.
That's painful. Yeah.
And we have other, Annette, she says she does hers in Excel, so that's good.
Nice.
Lady, Excel can never be old. I love it. Yep. Haley, same. Excel is my best friend. So we're getting a lot of
awesome. Okay, good.
A lot of
good.
Excel people on here too.
Perfect.
Terry said holding it up to the light doesn't work anymore, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No, back in the day, for those of y'all that are newer and have never experienced those, we used to have to do a whole lot of fun stuff to try to decipher these charts when we would get them in a handwritten manner. Back in the day when we would do, I had an office that was on pegboard, believe it or not, that I was working with. So yeah, that was the worst. But we deal with what we have, right? And not everybody's electronic. Some places choose not to because the physician doesn't like it. Some places it's because they're small and they don't think they can afford it, so whatever. So if you're looking into doing this as a service, you probably are going to come across somebody, or if you're looking at back issues, because sometimes a payor may be looking at things that are back from 2016, 2017, and maybe back then they weren't on the EHR yet. So, you may have to be, trying to decipher hieroglyphics at some point.
Yep.
So then with the tools that I like to use, I always like to have first, I ask the client for their policies and procedures on coding and E&M, if I'm looking at primarily E&M, that are in their compliance program, which usually brings a response of, we don't have any policies, or we don't even have a compliance program. So that starts a whole different discussion with them that you can have, and that there are still practices out there. And I these kind of things just amaze me when I keep coming across them. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but there are still practices out there that don't think they need to have a compliance program, because back however many decades ago that was, they came out with the, suggested one. It was just suggested for small practices, but that no longer is the case. And people, I think, still hark back to that time because, they don't want to do it. So, they're going to be like, no, we don't have to do that. And I find that that's like one of the first issues that I come across when I'm doing audits. How about you, Sonal?
Yeah, when you have the smaller providers come in, that's the number one thing that kind of stops you, right, from moving forward. You want to really help them establish one. And you're absolutely right. And I think probably 98% of the cases, they don't have one. They don't even have a skeleton of one, right? So much more conversation comes out of that. They're admitting that they don't have one. So yeah, absolutely. That's also one of the first things that I think everybody should be asking for when you are involved in their audit requests.
Yeah, because when you're doing an audit, if you don't have standards from them, and you're auditing by CMS, maybe they don't go by CMS. Maybe they go by CPT when it doesn't agree with CMS, but if they don't have policies on that, how are you supposed to know that? So you want to make sure, especially if you're doing this, as an out. Now internally, if you work where you're doing it, you're going to know. But if you're looking at, doing them externally, you need to make sure you're apples and apples looking at things. It's not fair to audit a practice under, just like when we had the 2 sets of guidelines, right? You wouldn't want to audit a practice under the 97 guidelines if they use the 95 guidelines. It's not always going to make a difference, but it could. And so you don't want to, be auditing them under some guidelines that they don't use, because then, secondarily, when you go and give them the audit report and you're talking about things, then, they're like, what are you talking about? And then, so then you bring up another mess of, do I have to redo some of these now? Or do it, so always ask for that before you start the audit so that you know what they use. I think that starts you off on the best foot when you're going, because that's something that you're going to have to read through and look at and see what they follow. And it's someplace that if you find something in there that, they say is their policy, but goes against, CPT and CMS, it's also something where you can kind of point some things out to them that maybe they need to update this because maybe their policies haven't been looked at for 5 years, is another thing. That's something that should get annually, if not semi-annually, looked through, is what those policies are, because we know now CMS and the payors can change how they're looking at things anytime they wish. So, if you're waiting and never looking at it, chances are when you go back to it, some of the stuff is going to be outdated.
Absolutely. Yep.
So also then, now I like to use an encoder. So there are many different encoders out there, when we have the software, and I use Encoder Pro. I don't get
Optum.
anything from them, or, so I use it from Optum. They also have one, AAPC has one. There's a couple different kinds out there. What I like about using the encoder is that I can input all of my CPT codes, click a button, and it will show me if there's NCCI things going on there, if there's bundling things, if modifiers are allowed to bypass it. I can look up in mine, because I have the module that has the CPT, total CPT or something they call it. So if I click on a CPT code, I also see every article that the AMA's put out about it, what they put in, the changes when it first came out, and all of that stuff. So I can click on the stuff underneath it and like go to the CPT assistant articles that the AMA wrote about it and read through those too, to see if there's something in there to support a position we're taking or something like that in it. So that's why I like to use an encoder, because it saves me Googling or looking around and trying to find all this other stuff. You can do it all, when you're within the program. Do you have a favorite encoder, or do you like the
Same.
encoders? What's your feel?
Same. Yeah. Excuse me. You absolutely have to purchase an encoder when you are an auditor. Absolutely. I also use the Optum Pro, Encoder Pro. I love it. I've used it for, I guess, over a decade. It's been the only one that I've really, truly trusted. Absolutely. The modifiers, you have to see when things are bundled, when you can unbundle it, when it's allowed, those MUEs. There's so much information on that Optum platform that is so very useful for any specialty that you're auditing as well, not just your straight up E&M stuff. So I really do appreciate having that as a trusty tool, having that open when you're auditing. That's a must, in my opinion. I have not used the one from the AAPC. Hopefully some people can chime in and see if it's any good. But I really do like the Optum Encoder Pro, and it's fantastic. All the articles that you can read from CPT Assistant, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you can also, depending on how in depth you want to get into that encoder, you can also purchase an add-on module that has all of the coding clinic stuff in there.
Yes.
So if you're looking at like HCC stuff or something like that, so you could avail yourself more of that side of it. So there's all these little add-on options that just saves you a lot of time. And that's really, again, what we're looking to do, because we want to be efficient and we want to get through this, because usually when we're doing these for our clients, our turnaround times, it's not like, well, I just want it sometime this year. I mean, we have to make sure we're turning them around as quickly as we can for our clients, and so that just kind of helps us get through them in a timely fashion. But if you don't use an encoder, there are ways like the NCCI edits we were talking about, because I think when you're auditing, once again, depending on their policies, if you have Medicare patients, they're going to use the NCCI edits from your Medicare payor.
Right. From Medicare.
But on commercial patients, they may or may not use the NCCI edits. So one of the things, back to the compliance program thing, is that it should be stated in there whether they follow or don't follow the NCCI edits for everybody. Maybe they say we follow them for Medicare, but not for our commercial patients. We follow the CPT guidelines for commercial patients, because sometimes they don't match. Right. So if you find that CPT says you can bill something and you're getting denied from a payor, it might be that there's an NCCI edit on it, and that's what they go by. So you can go to the CMS website, and here's the link. I'll put it in the chat too, where you can just, they have them all in Excel. There's a bunch of Excel sheets, and all of the edits are in there for you. So you can do find, like in the Excel thing, and you can put the code in and it will take it to you, because you don't want to be trying to go down 30,000
cells. Right.
To find your code. But it does list them that way. So if you just want to check it out, or I've had there was a practice I just recently was working with, and they said that that's what they did. That the practice did not purchase an encoder, and so they had to go to the NCCI edits themselves, and everything that they were doing, they had to check through the edits this way, through the Excel spreadsheets. So it can be done. It's a little more timely. It takes you a little longer to do it.
Right. It's a free option, but it's definitely more time consuming, because you have to hit that find button, right? You have to find it and then scroll down all of those cells.
And so each and
every CPT code, right? So you have to do it again and again and again. So it is time consuming, but it is free. So
yes. So you got to kind of look and see, where what you can use and what tools you can have at your disposal. So that's why we wanted to show this, is that if you can't have that, or if at the practice you're at, they don't want to purchase something like that, that you still can find it, and you can find it at no charge. So I just put the link that was up on the screen. I just put it in the chat for y'all too. Now, to start off the audit, we were talking about last time about which kind of audit you want to do, but I currently have one that we're starting that they're having us choose the charts, how of the records that they want to audit. They want us to pick them because it's going to be random. So to do a truly random audit, what I like to do is use another piece of software that's called RAT Stats, RATSTATS. It again is on the OIG website. It is free software that you can download. And when you download it onto your computer, and the icon for it is a big rat. I was like, they haven't changed that. I find that just amusing. So that's how you know that's the software you want. So it is a way to be able to get a
statistically valid sample. It's such a yucky word. I know. I also make lots of boo-boos when I try and say it, but statistically valid sample.
So it's real quick. You put how many charts you have in total, how many records, how many you want, and how many spares you want, because you always want to ask for spares, even if they're picking them. Like, let's say you're going to do a 15 record. I always ask for 20, and I tell them that I need 5 as spare in case you get to one that there's some issue with it, or it's missing certain information. So it doesn't hold everything up while they're looking for things. You can go to one of the spares and still complete what you need to complete, and then you just let them know, hey, this record that I was auditing didn't have whatever, so they can check and make sure that it's actually there, but it's not holding you up. So it will give you spares, the number of spares that you say you want. So you enter that in, you click a button, and it gives you which ones to pull out. So it's nice and easy, nice and quick. Is it YouTube? I think there's a bunch of like tutorial videos that you can watch that they put up on different ways you can use this free software. So, and since that's what the government uses when they're looking. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm using what they're using. So we can say, and I always put that in my audit reports, that this is the software I used to pull out the truly random sample, so that's what I like to use. So it's very quick and easy. You're done, can pull them out, and you're ready to rock and roll, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So, and this is one, again, I will put that over in the chat box for everybody. Can't wait till Mary gets back and she can do, oh, hello, over there. Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Till Mary gets back and she can do all this for us. So that's what I use there, is I use the RAT Stats. So other things that you use, Sonal, when you're doing audits besides the NCCI edits and the RAT Stats?
Well, I always need to audit specific to the payer, right? We keep talking about Medicare. There's also Medicaid that you need to audit, right? Medicaid from state to state has wonderful public policies that are available on the web, right? So you have to really be savvy and, use some elbow grease and find those payer policies, whether it's commercial as well. Aetna has tons. All of the Blues have their own. Anthem is carved out separately, right? You have to pick your state of Ohio or California Anthem, right? So you have to really understand what the payer is, right? Because that is based on the reimbursement. And so we can't forget that really critical component to the audit, right? It's not just about the documentation or the CPT code. It has to be about that payer's policy that has to be followed for each and every client. So I think that's really, really important. And I think over my years, I've seen many an audit that doesn't provide that specific piece of information. When I've reviewed past audits that the provider or hospitals have had, previous companies or consultants or entities, whoever they are, did not provide that very necessary criteria in my mind about that reimbursement payer policy. Who actually paid on that claim in 2012, right? I need to know. And that
Right.
cell on my Excel spreadsheet, on their Excel spreadsheet, was non-existent. It wasn't created, right? So there's things like that I think are really critical when you perform an audit. Is don't forget that payer policy. That's a big one. It's a big one.
Yeah, I agree with that. They really, I found sometimes, because it's hard, especially if you're a large practice or a large multi-clinic, kind of place, to code and submit claims by payer policy. There's just so many of them that most places just can't keep up. Now, I do have some smaller practices that, because they do, like, they're a specialty, so there's a limited number, of codes that they do. So they can they say, I know for this payer and for that payer. And so they do switch it up, which again is something you need to know when you're going to audit them, so that you're auditing them fairly. But a lot of times they'll look, and as we talk about doing the audit, when I'm doing the report, I'll make a notation that Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota, or wherever I did, their policy says blah blah blah, and that wasn't notated in the chart note, so I had to disallow that CPT code. And they'll come back to me and won't understand, like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, the payor was Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota, and they have a policy that says, this has to be notated in the documentation. It wasn't in there. They're clueless, have no idea. So either they've been getting denied for it and don't realize it, right, or they've been getting denied and can't understand and are appealing, and they can't win their appeals and don't know why. So there's a lot of things like that come out when we do audits. I'm sure you found that too, right, Sonal?
100%. That is one of my biggest issues with how our landscape of coding has been done. I think I've said this many times in different platforms, but I really do think that disconnect starts right there as a coder, right? You are not, I remember, I was not ever instructed to code the service with a payer policy in mind, right? It was simply to code based on that CPT code or the HCPCS code, right? Based on the documentation. Nowhere did anybody ever say, well, why don't you acknowledge who that, patient has as a insurance carrier, right? That was never discussed when I started as a coder, right? So in my subsequent roles as an auditor, I see all of the trickle-down effect of things, like you stated, being denied, right? And things are held up. And when the auditor goes in and looks, and we have all of our tools, and that, number 2 tool is that reimbursement payer policy, right? And it's right there. Once you find it, that particular service is not even allowed. Like you said, it's a disallowed service based on Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota and Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina, right? There were 2 patients at that entity that had that particular insurance and that same service, and those 2 patients' services were denied, right? And that's kind of a basic reason. It just was about the payer policy. That was it. It was that simple. So the code was right, the diagnosis was right, the documentation's great, everything's fine, but it will never be paid because of payer policy. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be done, and I'm hopeful that our coding professions, our auditing professionals, things will turn much more analytical, and some critical thinking skills are going to have to really be ramped up as we start our careers in coding, so we can start sending out claims, much more quote unquote cleanly now, moving forward. Because I think we've really missed many, many opportunities to send those claims out clean for all of these decades. Just my 2 cents there, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's why, some larger places, they have those claim scrubbers. So they'll input the stuff, it goes through the scrubber at night, and then the next day you have the work queue, but those things are very expensive.
Those are, yep.
Yeah.
So expensive.
So it for smaller practices and places like that, you just really need your staff to keep up on that, which again is another thing that's keeping them busy and taking up time. But if you want to get paid, these are things you have to know. You have to be able to get paid for the services y'all are doing. And so you need to understand all the payer policies that you have in play here. So that's one place where having an audit, can be helpful to a practice, having an outside audit done, because they may come out with something like that the practice wasn't even aware of. Another thing with doing the audit, I always make sure when I'm working my spreadsheet, that I'm notating any undercoding or missed revenue, that's there too. Because I usually find, in my opinion, most of the times when I see that the level from the documentation doesn't match the level that the physician assigned for it or the APP, usually it's because the physician underdocumented. I don't get a lot where they're just all, I'm so great, everything I do is a 5. And, I don't really get a lot of that, honestly. A lot of mine are more that they're underdocumenting, not overcoding. So it's something that I always make sure I make comments on, because as I go through an audit, I have a comments whole column where I'm always putting that kind of stuff in there about, the patient's presenting problem was an exacerbated chronic issue, but, they didn't say that it was flaring or that it wasn't at goal, or, they're not putting that information in there that's necessary to support that level 4, that level 5, and so as you're auditing it, I can't give it to them. I mean, I can see, and you can kind of tell, just like, when we've done this for so long, you're looking at it and going, oh, and you're ended up having to give them a 2 or a 3, and you're like, oh man, I feel so bad, but that's one of those educational points. A lot of times I find missed revenue from under documenting, or just, I thought the nurse was checking that off on the encounter form when they did. I had one practice that they were missing a lot of revenue from injections, because the physician would say the patient needed an injection. He would go on to the next patient. The nurse would come in and give the injection. Now, this was back in the old encounter form, go up, and she wasn't marking it on the encounter form. She thought he did it because he ordered it. He was like, well, no, I didn't do it. She did it. So it turns out nobody was doing it. So they weren't getting the drug money back.
Wow.
And they weren't getting paid for doing the injections. So when I did and that was one of his concerns when they had me come in, was that there is this, I don't know where all our revenue's at, like we're losing all this money. I don't know how, and I'm like, well, so all of that stuff, and those drugs are very costly. And back in the day, they used to be able to get a little bit more back than what they can now. So it was definitely a big revenue loss to them for not having those things done. So a lot of times we'll come across stuff like that, and having the audit done pays for itself basically, because of the stuff that we find. And it also pays for itself in just the whole compliance, and you have the peace of mind that you're covered. But really, a lot of times we do find things that aren't billed. And again, Sonal, I'm sure you have a story of.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. When you go in for the audit, it's not just something that is punitive, right? I always like to go in with that kind of a mindset, right? Because we've seen so many records in our decades, right? We know that things aren't fully captured. There's always money on the table. So you're absolutely right. That comments column on our Excel spreadsheet is key. Because as you go in from patient to patient, you can make comments, right, on why this is underdocumented, right? How can you improve that documentation language, right, to support the fact that the patient's diagnosis, their condition was exacerbated, right? We need to see stronger language in there to support that new 99214, right? So there's many things that can be done for documentation improvement, and you make those notes in the comment section. But again, when you have surgeries, there are so many coders that still code from just the header of the operative report, right? You're missing other potential services. When you actually take the time to read that body of the op report entirely, right? So there's been many cases where things have been missed over the years. And then later in our conversation in a few weeks, that's when we can talk about, right, how do you present those findings, right? Those more rich findings to your providers. And that's where everything comes full circle. It's a win-win, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we have some dings on our comments, but we also have a lot of good things that they did. So yeah, it's really important to disclose and be transparent in an audit.
Yeah.
Everything that you see.
Yep. Grabiella said that she sees missed revenue for smoking and tobacco cessation because everything besides the time has been documented, and it's a time-based code. Yeah,
Right.
a lot of times it's a little thing. It's like there's one thing missing, and that kind of knocks it off. And this again, the cessation is not a highly paid code, but if you're doing it patient, it adds up.
It adds up.
So it's in fact, I have a client right now, a cardiology client I was working with, that they were not reporting moderate sedation. Now, you don't get anything other than that first code, because Medicare considers everything else technical, blah, blah, blah stuff. And when they looked at it for the facility, the reimbursement's like $12.50 or something. But again, it was like, well, we do this all day long. I'm like, that's my point. So sometimes it's something little that adds up. And like I said, it can pay for the entire audit that's being done.
Exactly.
And with that cessation, the smoking cessation, just a little pointer here about that one, y'all, because I've seen this, and actually somebody got called out about that at the CPT symposium one year. Don't bill for it if the patient didn't ask you for it, because you think you need to talk to every smoker about why it's good for them to quit, and then think you can bill for that. No, that's not a good idea. If the patient didn't ask for it, then it's not a service that you should be reporting. There was a case at the CPT symposium one year. Somebody asked about, why do y'all put codes in CPT that we can't get paid for? And they said, well, it's not a billing book. It's to report the services you did. So you did the service. We have codes for you to report that, because if nobody's reporting it, you're never going to get paid for it. But if there's ways to report it, then it might become a payable service at some point. And somebody then had come up when the Medicare administrative contractor directors were up on the stage and said that they had gotten into an argument with one of the patients that they had done the smoking cessation on, that told them that they shouldn't smoke, blah, blah, blah. And they billed for it and they got paid for it. and the patient had their amount, and the patient refused to pay it because he said, I like smoking. I didn't ask you to tell me how to stop smoking. I didn't want that service. And so she was like, the lady was trying to say, what, and the director said, wait a minute. He says, you're telling me that you forced a service on a patient that didn't ask for it, that didn't want it, and now you're trying to make them pay for it after you tried to have us pay for it? And you could see the recognition was starting to come across her face as he was putting the questioning that way to her. She was just like, I felt so bad for the poor thing. And he was just like, never, ever do something like that. We will very much come after you for things like that.
Wow.
So if they don't want it, you're done. Don't force things on the patients like that. Let's see. Debbie's asking, where can she find an audit spreadsheet? I personally created my own, and I'm sure someone
I create my own.
But I think you need to customize it to whatever kind of audit you're doing and whatever you're looking at. Like sometimes it might be E&M, sometimes it might be surgical things, sometimes it might be diagnoses things for like HCC or something. So all dependent, but basic information I usually have on mine is the medical record number, the date of service, what was the codes that were put out by the provider, or the client, whoever, does the coding there, what I coded it as when I audited it. And then I have a column for comments. So basically that's what I go off of. Is that similar to what you do, Sonal?
Yes. And I also have a column for the payer as well. I also have a little cell for Aetna.
Yes.
It needs to be simple and then changeable for each of your providers, right? And then it'll just become second nature to you to have your own audit spreadsheet.
Yep. And Haley brought out a good point with CPT about the code stuff. She says you have to keep in mind the CPT is used in multiple countries, and who's to say that a code isn't paid in Europe but not paid, in the United States. So it very well could be that in some countries they accept certain codes and others that they don't. Very, very definitely. And what's interesting, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but one year I met someone from South Africa at the CPT symposium, because people come from all over to attend it. And they were using CPT, but they were using CPT from like 4 years ago. Yeah. So like different countries also use them from different times, which I found very interesting. So if you ever are talking to someone from somewhere else and they're talking about CPT, you might want to ask them what year CPT they're using, because it might not be the same as the current year because of like how they receive it, or I don't remember how they got through that, but yeah, it's not always going to be the same as what you're using here in the States. And then, we only have 2 minutes left. See, that went fast again, didn't it?
So fast. What?
And that, so we were going to kind of just talk about audit software a little bit, but I don't think we really have time. Like I said, I'm not a big audit software person myself, but for those of y'all that want to look into some audit software, GEBS, GEBBS, is a company that has a Atom Audit, ATOM, Atom Audit, MD Audit, IntelliCode, again, Healthicity, ReviewMate, and I think there was another one, Sonal, that you had mentioned.
We have a good friend, Shirley Moy, and she has Swift Audit. Audit, SWIFT Audit.
Yeah. So those are just a couple things to kind of check out. Having audit software can save you time on the front end and can kind of make templated reports out, which we'll talk about reports next time. So we'll maybe bring up the audit software again then, because we can talk about different ways that you can use it, because you can use the audit software not for doing the audit, but also using it for the reporting purposes instead. So there's different ways that you may want to use it, but not use it fully to what they can be used for. But we'll talk about that next time. Oh, Barbara. Hey, Barbara, by the way. Barbara says that she's used Healthicity. So maybe next time when we talk about the reporting, we can round back to that. And Barbara, if you're joining, maybe you can put in some comments on that for us and for everybody else that's listening. But thanks, y'all, for joining us today. And we'll have our part 3. I did not write it down before our session today, but we'll have our part 3 coming out where we'll talk about the after you're done, doing the reports, presenting the reports, things like that, what to include in the reports. So that will probably be, I think it's in June though, right?
I think
it's in June because May, I think we only have one more session in May, and I think of a different guest for that. So yes. And by the way, Stacy Buck is going to be a guest in one of the upcoming ones. Yeah, I'm really excited about that, having her. Yes. So wonderful. So thanks, y'all. Sonal, any parting words from you?
Thank you. No, this was another great session. I hope our audience understands the audit process and how tools are our friends since we are the auditors. So use those tools. Love it.
Definitely. All right, y'all. Well, we will see y'all again soon. And thanks for spending some time with us today, and have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.